everyone. Welcome back to Purposeful Parenting, a sensory savvy approach where we are exploring all aspects of child neurodevelopment and how that impacts the behaviors that we see in children. From infancy to adolescence, we're covering it all. And today we have with us Carol, and Carol is an award-winning author, and she has two books coming out. Have they come out, both of them, or are they coming out soon?
One's been out for a few weeks and one comes out in a few days.
Okay, can you tell us more about your books?
Yeah. Yes. The one I'm not going to talk about today is this one about a year of mini moves for the in-sync child. I wrote this with Joy Newman, and this is playful little activities, tiny little one-a-day activities for young children to develop their sensory motor, perceptual motor, and visual motor skills.
Oh, so that is a great resource. Yes.
It is a great resource, and all kids with or without sensory issues can benefit from it. But we come from a sensory processing background, so we want to get kids using all their muscles and all their senses so they'll develop.
Yeah, we are all sensory beings. We talked about in the first interview with Sarah Schoen, we're all processing sensation all day long. So it's good for us all.
I know, it's so amazing. So amazing. And we don't think about it when it's all going well.
Right? Exactly. Yes. Yes. So what's the other book?
The other book, which the official launch is Tuesday, April 19th, and it is The Out of Sync Child as the third edition. This book came out originally in 1998, and then it was revised in the second edition in 2006, and this is the third edition. So it's a big deal because there's so much new information in it. And I have new chapters about things like lookalikes, SPD lookalikes, like learning disabilities, ADHD, autism. Those look like SPD, and they are sometimes children are misdiagnosed and given medicine or therapies that are not as appropriate as occupational therapy, as you know, Tara. That's the best thing for kids with sensory issues. So I'm really excited. It's major. It's like birthing a new baby to have a new edition. It took a lot of time, and so many people like Sarah Schoen and Lindsay Beal and some of the others on your roster.
Yes, that we are going to hear from.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So again, another amazing resource for parents, especially if you think you are parenting a uniquely wired or differently wired child. Yes.
Definitely.
So today we're going to dive into three specific areas that you do talk about in your book, The Out of Sync Child. They are eating, sleeping, and toileting, and why those are so challenging when you do have difficulties processing sensation. Carol, can you tell us why these three areas are such common challenges?
I'll try.
Yeah.
We all have to do those things, and only I can make myself sleep or eat or use the toilet, and you can't make me. And these are areas where children who feel as if they are out of sync, they feel like they have no control. Many times emotionally, they think they might not think it in their prefrontal lobe where they do their executive thinking, but they sense this is something that I can control myself.
Right.
So that's one problem. Also, there are sensory issues that underlie the issues that kids have with eating, sleeping, and toileting. And Tara, I was a preschool teacher for many years, and I'm an OT wannabe. So So I never got to
We
be that
accept
teacher.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But while I was teaching, I was working hard to be a detective and to find out, to look at, excuse me, children's behavior and try to figure out, was there some sensory input that was bothering them? And it was a great discovery to me when I understood that children with tactile over responsiveness did not like the tags in their t-shirts or the seams in their socks. And then I was able to help them. That was something tangible I could do. So I was always looking to see what's going on with the child's behavior that will affect the way, I'm sorry, what's going on in the child's physical
Body.
underlying
Yeah.
self that is affecting the kid's behavior.
Mhm.
And I had two epiphanies that I was able to help the parents with. One of them was, I noticed there was a child whose vestibular system was out of sync. This little child kept his feet rooted to the ground all the time. His feet never left the ground. No way did that child want to get on a swing or try the slide or a balance beam in an obstacle course. No, no, no. He wanted to hang on to the earth with his feet, and preferably to a fence post or a teacher or something with his hand.
Yeah.
So there was no way he ever got on a swing. Well, one day the mom was saying to me that she was having quite a time at home toilet training her child. He was 4. It was time. She hoped bringing him to nursery school would encourage him to do what the other kids were doing.
Yeah, potty train.
No.
Yeah.
So, so I said, I've noticed that his feet want to stay on the ground. I wonder when he's sitting on the toilet, do his feet touch the ground? And she said, well, no, because he's up. I said, why don't you give him a box to put under his feet so that his knees are at a right angle and his feet are not dangling, they're solid. That helped that little boy so much with his having a bowel movement in the toilet.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And there was another little kid who suddenly stopped sleeping, and the mother said, I don't understand it. We finally figured out how to get him to sleep with his blankie and the lights just right. And the other day I washed his blanket. I thought it would be really great for him. And I said, oh, you washed his blanket. You changed the way it smells. And it wasn't ripe with his own familiar scent.
That
And
comfort.
yeah. So I was very proud of myself for coming up with these 2 little items just because I had noticed one little kid's feet, and another little kid he was a smeller. He was smelling everything. I thought today it might be helpful if we just looked at some lists of how the senses affect children and why there may be reasons that a child is having trouble with eating, sleeping, in the toilet.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to share my screen.
Yes. Can I mention one thing?
Oh, please.
That I started thinking. So, like the little boy on the toilet, or the blanket not being just right. Sometimes this can activate that stress response in us.
Yes.
Right. And I know that can even impact some of these, eating, sleeping, and toileting, because that stress response can do things like suppress your appetite. So now you're not hungry. What else? It like slows down gut motility because your body's not worried about eating at this time. It's worried about fighting the threat or running away from it. So even, neurologically, these daily activities are being impacted by our self-regulation, our stress responses, where we are in arousal. So again, yeah, they're big
Totally,
ones
totally.
that,
And the fear factor is big, and there's a lot of talk these days about feeling safe.
yeah, yes, we
And
talked about that.
yeah, and it's impossible to teach anything to a person who's fearful because he's worried about just trying to survive, which is what
Survival, yeah.
our senses first job, is to help
Mhm.
us survive. If you're worried that you're going to fall off the face of the earth if your feet leave the ground, uh, you're not going to swing, and you're not going to feel comfortable, and you're going to be stressed. So
Yes,
everything ties together, and with
exactly.
the senses are so important. We want to make them run smoothly as much as possible.
Yes. Okay, let's dive into these three areas. I know there's a lot of information and strategies that we can talk about here to help maybe parents in the audience who are experiencing these kind of issues.
Yes. So how does that look? I'm
Oh, there
sure.
we go. Beautiful.
Okay, great. All right. So this is the cover of my book. And I'm just going to run through some tips about eating, sleeping, and toileting from chapter 2 in
That would be great.
the third edition. Um, so SPD has an effect on everything we do. And I just have an example from each of the eight uh, sensory systems,
Mhm.
because the more important an activity is, the more senses we use simultaneously.
Right.
And eating is a hugely important activity to keep us alive, to keep us surviving. So we use all of our senses for eating. And if one or 8 of our senses are not working smoothly, it will interfere with this very, very basic uh, activity of daily
Yeah.
living.
Yeah.
So, for instance, sight. Some kids just don't want to don't want to look at certain foods. Some might remind the children of unpleasant past eating experiences, like they choked on something and they never want to see that food again, or they don't like the way the foods touch, or maybe there's a little juice that runs into something else, or they just look gross. The texture, consistency, and temperature of the child will affect the kid's tactile processing. So over responsive children are going to object often to um, smooth foods or to lumpy foods. They prefer one but can't tolerate the other. Um, Temperature matters. Hot food might be acceptable but not cold, and vice versa. And then the child who has poor tactile discrimination, his tongue and the inside of his mouth may not be able to ascertain what that texture is. Oatmeal, for instance, or poppy seeds, or
Mhm.
um, popcorn, that something with varied textures and shapes in the mouth might be confusing, alerting, and stressifying. Smell, of course, that's a very important a system involved in eating too. And some smells might gross out the child, not the rest of us. We might think a banana smells delicious, but a lot of children are very offended by certain smells. And of course, taste. And what's interesting is when there are a bunch of reasons that a child's not eating a variety of food and they begin to eat fewer and fewer foods, what happens is they lose the minerals, zinc, magnesium, other
Okay.
minerals that help us enjoy food. So the narrower the food range is, the narrower those uh,
Like
minerals are.
positive experiences with the
That's right.
food. Yeah.
So So, for instance, a child who doesn't eat vegetables is not getting a lot of zinc.
Mhm.
And I call that the out of zinc child.
I love that.
Because that kid will eat ordinary food and it will have a bitter or metallic or off taste to it. So you can see how the less he eats, the less he wants to eat because it
Yeah,
doesn't taste right.
right.
The sound of food. Um, uh, Auditory overresponsivity is not misophonia, which is hatred of sound,
Right.
but it is like it. And um, listening to people chewing and swallowing, the sound of uh, forks and knives rubbing together on the plate or touching somebody's teeth, things like that, that, most of us can live with, can be very, very unpleasant and
Mhm.
can annoy children sufficiently so they don't want to eat with the family. Their body position is involved with eating.
Mhm.
If they don't have oomph and kind of slump and curl over themselves, um, uh, chewing and swallowing is not going to be very comfortable. Um, Getting food, reaching for the cup of milk and bringing it to his mouth may be difficult if the child has issues with proprioception. Movement, being able to sit still
It's
for,
a big one.
yeah,
Yes.
and Sarah, I'm sure, and others have spoken about the vestibular system, which is so
Mhm.
important. And if this child is one who's uncomfortable moving, um, he hasn't he hasn't fulfilled his movement quota during the day,
Right.
and he might have low tone. He might not know if he's falling off the chair or sitting upright. All kinds of vestibular issues affect the child's um, ability to sit up
Mhm.
and eat. And his internal organs may be giving him irregular messages. He might know that he's full, so he might keep eating. He might not know that he's hungry, and he might never come to the table. That's
Mhm.
issues with interoception. Um, or the child might have a leaky gut, which often goes along with sensory issues, and
Mhm.
he might be legitimately frequently having tummy aches, which prevent him from wanting to eat anything because
Right.
it makes his tummy hurt and he knows he'll have diarrhea or
Mhm.
might be constipated. So kids, even if they can't articulate this, they're going to stay away from foods um, like milk and ice cream that make them uncomfortable. So all of this matters. And, say a parent has a whole lot of children in the family and all the other kids just eat that
Mhm.
broccoli and that cream of wheat and and then
Everything.
they've got Bobby here and Bobby doesn't eat. And so we have to put on our imaginary sensory spectacles and ask ourselves, is there a sensory component
Mhm.
that's getting in the way of this child's ability to do what we expect kids to do? So
Mhm.
here and interrupt me anytime, Tara. I'm just going to keep talking unless you.
Yeah, no, this is great. I love, the visual and we can just flow right through.
Right.
One thing I will say is when there is an underlying processing skill, when you are trying to learn to eat, kids, if it's hard, if they do get the tummy ache, if they do have trouble chewing, maybe they're getting tired, whatever the underlying reason is, that's when kids will start to learn to avoid the task. So then you start seeing the, meltdowns before meal times, the rigidity. Everything has to be exactly the same every single time because I know what's safe for my body. And if it's different, stress alarms go off. Now we're in survival mode and, we're not hungry and the whole meal's shot. So yes, this is all very, very important. So I love that we're breaking it all down.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So a friend and colleague is Kelly Dorfman, a nutritionist, and she's written a very, very helpful book, Cure Your Child with Food. And these are ideas I've gotten through conversations with her and through reading what she writes. She says, eliminate the junk food, just get it out of the house. Okay. Eliminate juice and replace with water. The child needs to be hydrated. He does not need that sugar that comes in the juice boxes.
They are full of sugar.
Eliminate irritants. So here's a list. These are common irritants. And your child might have an intolerance to chocolate. That's not the end of the world. It is much harder if the child has an intolerance to dairy products, since a lot of kids prefer those foods, even though they're toxic to them. And, it's good to work with an occupational therapist or a nutritionist if your child has, for instance, dairy or wheat intolerances, because you'll need to work around those. But look and see, can you see a correlation between the grilled cheese sandwich for lunch and the mac and cheese for dinner and 9 foamy, stinky bowel movements that day?
Right.
Hey, maybe there's a connection. So it's important to look at what the child's eating and think about the complaints of a stomach ache, what the poop is like. I mean, it should be well-formed stool, not so stinky that you can't stand to be in the bathroom at the same time. And it should not be stuck inside the child either.
Right.
Okay. Add nutritional supplements, and this parents don't do alone. They do with the guidance of a nutritionist. I don't know if pediatricians help with this. They may, if they're educated about it and if they know about sensory processing. Anyway, these are just some suggestions there. Then physically, you can get a vibrating toothbrush, and you don't have to put toothpaste on it, just the toothbrush alone, and let the child put it in his mouth and move it around his mouth, or hold the handle, which throbs a little bit, and hold that against the cheeks. That might be organizing for the to desensitize and organize the lips and mouth. I always think OT using a sensory integration approach is the best thing in the world.
Absolutely. So
do that. And then Lindsay Beal, another one of your speakers, is she's the author of Raising a Sensory Smart Child, which is a wonderful book. And her idea is we want to make sure that the child has a sensory enriched life. This means 3-dimensional activities, concrete activities, not the abstract 2-dimensional stuff that a child gets through electronic devices. A sensory enriched life is outdoors. It's turning rocks over to look at the bugs. It's climbing the tree. It's picking flowers. It's chewing on grass. It's out there. And that's what we need to do, because when we're having a varied life using all our senses in the 3-dimensional world, we're helping get an appetite, and we're helping with digestion, and we're helping lower stress, and it's all related to eating.
Yes.
So those are just a few ideas.
Absolutely. And I will mention, Britt Collins is diving into feeding a little bit more later on in the series. And so if your child is struggling, we do have another interview just on feeding, because it is so important. It involves all 8 sensory systems, so it is a big one. So yeah,
Wonderful.
we will
And
learn some of those things.
Britt's a wonderful friend too. We had fun doing presentations together for
Yeah.
Sensory World. I love Britt. Okay, here. Another area that nobody can make a child do, just as you can't make a child eat, you can't make the child poop.
Mhm.
And here's just some ideas of 7 of the senses. There are 8 senses, but I left taste out of this one. Okay, so sight. Looking at the stool might be very icky to the child.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to that. Well, maybe
Yeah.
most of us.
Yeah. Or if we have a sensory craver, we might have a child who is
Yeah,
fascinated by it, and
they want to touch it.
they want to touch it. They want, they want to
Yep,
play
I've
with it.
seen that too. Yep.
Yep. So there you go. That's interesting aspects of toilet. As far as touch goes, the over-responsive child might be very offended by the feel of it, the wetness, stickiness. Or the under-responsive child might not notice it. And so it might be harder for that child to learn bladder control. And if he's peeing in his pants and it doesn't matter to him, hey, it doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
I hear some parents and teachers say that the new diapers these days are terrible for toilet training because they keep the child comfortable.
Oh, they're too good.
They're too good.
I never even thought of that.
So, go back to cloth diapers or thin Pampers or something that makes the
Yeah.
child uncomfortable, and see if that it makes a difference. The smell might be repellent. Other children might love it. Think it's fascinating. The sound. Okay, this is really interesting. I know a little girl with auditory over-responsivity who had terrific problems in the bathroom. And the reason when she was finally, I think 4, she was able to say to her mother, it sounds like I'm under a waterfall. And maybe she needed to have that experience so she could explain to her mother what the sound of a flushing toilet was like. And then the mother got it, that it was just that flushing agitated this child so much. So that was a pretty easy solution. The child finished at the toilet, cleaned up, left the bathroom, and then mom flushed the toilet. And that was such a relieving solution that the child wasn't afraid of the bathroom anymore. Body position. If you don't know where your muscles and joints are and where your body parts are, just hanging onto the toilet, sitting upright on the toilet might be hard. Also, for a lot of kids, who are small, being on a family-sized toilet seat could be difficult. So I'm sure that's a no-brainer. Start little kids on something that fits their smaller buttocks.
Yeah, because if you're like all tensed up hanging on a toilet, your body cannot relax to let everything come out.
Right.
So yeah, that's
yeah. So
easy, quick fix that might solve the issue.
Right. Movement. Again, a child like in the list for eating, a child's got to move to get his internal organs humming and working. And the sedentary child who is glued to his handheld device or the desktop device is not going to get that peristalsis. What's the word? Peristalsis. The movement that's necessary for having a bowel movement. Also, the child may feel unbalanced and ungrounded if his feet are falling off, not grounded. So that's where a box comes in. I used to recommend telephone books, but Tara, that shows how old I am because
Oh.
we don't have telephone books anymore.
Yeah, well, nowadays, grab your Amazon boxes. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Surely you've got one in the house. It's the right height. And so another sensory system is interoception, and
Mhm.
that's all about our internal organs. And the child might be super aware or not aware enough of how his internal organs feel, how full he is with the feces
Yeah.
that need to come out.
Yeah.
Here are some suggestions, and I thank Maria Wheeler. She's a behavioral therapist, and she wrote Toilet Training for Individuals with Autism and Other Developmental Issues. And these are common sense. Plenty of water, fiber, and movement.
Mhm.
Fiber, water, and movement. Water. Kids should, have a glass nearby all day long so that they're flushing their system all day long. A visual toileting schedule. This might be helpful for some kids who just, Tara, before you were talking about children who are rigid. This can be very comforting to have a schedule. They like things just so. They like to know that
Yep.
this,
Know what's coming. Yeah.
right. And, that getting ready to get dressed and go to school, it might be very nice to see the schedule and to have a little picture there.
And even if it's a kiddo who's maybe under responsive and not getting the message, having a schedule, maybe you track it at first and see at what times are they having the accidents, and then you create a visual schedule around those times, so you're trying to get out in front.
Really smart, right?
Yeah.
Right, because a lot of us have a bowel movement after breakfast and
Yeah, pretty
and
much regular. Hopefully it's regular
right. And
every day. Yeah.
some kids, their circadian rhythms can be
Yeah.
different, and it could be that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is their time.
Yep.
So I love that
I love it.
idea that you
Mhm.
notice it and build the schedule around what the child's body is
Yeah.
wanting to do. A step stool again, and then working with an occupational therapist, a nutritionist, or someone with expertise in bladder and bowel problems.
Yeah.
These three things, eating, toilet training, and sleeping, that I'm talking about with you right now, are really important. And if they are tying the family in knots because it's not going well, it's such a relief to talk to a specialist about
Mhm.
these issues. And so, it's possible to wait it out and hope that the child will finally come around. But I don't know. I would suggest get a little help if these are your problems, because life
Mhm.
at home, there's so much more to do to have a joyful home than spend time trying to get your kid to eat, sleep, or poop.
Yes. Yep. And there's help out there. That's what we're here for.
That's right. So the third topic is sleeping, and there might be sensations that you might not have thought about until you put on your sensory spectacles. And so touch, the fabric in the pajamas is important, and go for the softest pajamas you can find. Um, I don't know if there's flame retardant put in pajamas, or if parents care about that anymore. My two sons are in the middle of their lives, and many years ago, when they were young, that it was quite the thing to get flame retardant pajamas. And these my boys didn't have any tactile discrimination or modulation problems, but they hated those pajamas. They smelled bad and they were crispy. And I washed them a number of times. It still didn't work. Get rid of them. Who needs it? Or let the kids sleep naked.
I was just gonna say that some want to not have pajamas on at all, and if that's gonna help them sleep through the night, so be it.
Of course, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So it's the quality of the sheets, the blankets, the
Mhm.
pajamas that will be affecting them. So get the finest cotton sheets you
Yeah.
can. Uh, don't put polyester sheets on the child. He might be that sensitive that he just needs the fine cotton, and let that be your expenditure. It's worth it. Sounds might bother the child.
Mhm.
Um, like like sounds bother a child who doesn't like the way silverware sounds knocking against somebody else's teeth, or
Yeah.
snoring, heavy breathing. That can be very, very um, annoying to the child and keep the child awake. So maybe if you can give the child his own room, if that's a possibility. Um, in a small house with a big family, that's not always a
Mhm.
possibility, but you might see what you can do there.
Yeah, get creative.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
creative, right? Right. Maybe the child can sleep in a teepee, or you can put a blanket over the dining room table, and that can be where the child sleeps.
Yeah,
But
little safe place. Yeah.
his own little safe place. And then think about the house too. There are house sounds that can be very irritating.
Mhm.
And then there are sounds of nature out the window. It can be the rain or the crickets that are annoying. So try to figure out. Um, I didn't. Oh well, we'll get to solutions on the next page. Um, Sight. It can be light coming in that through the
Mhm.
shutters or the shades, and the child sees it. So change the position of the child's bed so that he doesn't see what's coming in through the window, if that's an issue. Don't have anything electronic near the child while he's sleeping. Everything must be turned off, and preferably turned off all through the house for the
Yeah.
nighttime, because some children are so sensitive, they will be aware of whatever that electromagnetic stuff is that's coming
Mhm.
from electronic devices. Um, be sure your child has had lots of movement during the day. Am I a broken record or what? Get outside, get those
Yes.
kids moving. Um, um, oh, and that's not what's written here, though. Well, what's written here is that activity in the bed may be the movement that bothers a child. So his own lack of movement during the day can affect how well he
Yep.
sleeps. But movement, if he's sleeping with a brother or sister and the mattress shifts, that can awaken a light sleeper.
Mhm.
Okay, body and muscles. Make sure the child gets his quota for
There we go.
there it is.
Yep.
There it is. Smell. Make sure that um, the smells are right,
Mhm.
and don't wash that blankie if you don't have to. It might
Right.
be exactly what the kid needs. And again, here we have internal organs. It could be poor appetite, or irregular bowel movements, or a heart rate, or stress, or things going on inside the child's body will certainly affect whether he
Yep.
falls asleep and stays asleep. So let's look at a few ideas of how to help a child sleep.
Okay.
During the day, lots of active movement. Um, Kelly Dorfman suggests things like magnesium, essential fatty acids.
Mhm.
So these things are not only for the child's nutrition, but for the regulation of the child's body.
Yes.
Before bed, take note with your sensory spectacles on. Do you notice that your child sleeps better after a bath at night? And not every kid has a daily bath, and you might see that the nights without the bath, the kid does not sleep as well. So that bath is so relaxing, and it might be exactly what the child needs. No TV or electronic devices for 2 hours before bed. Now, that's a very tall order. That's very hard. Uh,
Mhm.
easy for Carol Kranowitz to say, parents, don't don't let your kid near anything electronic for 2 hours before bed. But please try, and definitely do not let the electronics go in under the covers with the child. You have to put
Yeah.
your foot down about that. In bed, get a routine. One wonderful story, so a deep back massage, some hugs, some rub down of some kind, a tight tuck in if the child likes it. And then here's a secret. If your child's saying, I can't sleep, say, just pretend. And sometimes something that kooky and whimsical will help the child. Intellectually. It's not physical, it's cognitive. He's going to sleep. After the tuck in, a nightlight if the child wants it, music if you find that that's helpful to the child, and then white noise. White noise is very comforting. It's often the pitter patter of rain or waves or soothing nature sounds. And then also remember your own parental resolve. You've gone through the routine. You can reassure your child he's safe, he's warm, he's comfortable. Mom and dad are in the house. And now it's time for bed. Good night, dear. And be resolved. If the child keeps saying, waking up every half hour and calling for you, that the child is winning. And there are programs to help parents get over those bumps. But you might not have a bumpy time if you think about the sensory underpinnings of why the child's having some difficulties. So I hope this just gave you some tips with your beautiful sensory spectacles on to take a look at the sensory systems where the child's getting too much input or not enough, and see if you can make some changes and have a happier child doing these ordinary jobs of life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us. And, just if anyone in the audience is thinking that their child is having some struggles with this, like we mentioned, work with a therapist. The strategies here might not work for every child. It's going to be different depending on their unique wiring. So that's where it's going to take some trial and error. It might take, a deeper look into the sensory systems, even a deeper look into why is the child waking up every 30 minutes, or why are they, constipated, and breaking it down and creating a team to help you figure these out if it is something that is truly impacting daily life to the extent, as we talked about, where it's causing a lot of stress around your everyday. So thank you so much. And Carol, did you have a link for the audience? The free gift?
Oh, yes. How do I make that available?
That is going to be in their email, but can you explain what it is real quick?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Out of Sync Child has over 300 pages in it, and that's a lot to ask busy people to read. So if you just want sensory processing differences in a nutshell, I've put together a primer, and it has tons and tons of examples of things like tactile over responsivity or vestibular craving. And it's about 10 pages. And I think that if you keep it handy, you can refer to it. And I'm happy for you also to copy it and share it with your child's teacher or soccer coach or whoever you think might benefit from a little explanation. And it doesn't mean that they have to go and read a long book. Of course, you will love my book. but
Yes, you will learn a lot, but if you need a tidbit, thank
yes,
you so much for providing that for us, Carol.
you're welcome, of course.
All right, well, that is all we have time for today. Again, Carol, thank you. I know the audience learned so much, as did I, and I can't wait to dive into both of your books and check them out
Thank you.
as soon as they're available. So I will see
Thank you.
everyone tomorrow for our next interview.